Sorry. Welcome, everyone. So, this is probably going to be a bit unusual. Let me explain. So, we are about to do basically a redo of what I originally recorded to show what it's like to play through this game as a Death Knight. In that playthrough, which is still up, I mainly focused on the starter zone when you first create a Death Knight, and then what the campaign is like when you get to Legion. This is going to be more than likely a few videos where we are just going to focus on the starter zone. Now, if you're asking why am I redoing this portion where I show the starter zone, why am I doing it again? There's a couple reasons for that. For one, this time I'm going to do it on the side of the Alliance, where I show you what it's like to go through, at least when you get to the end, because what faction you are doesn't really matter until you finish the starter zone, and then you have to go through the capital city, and I'll show you what that's like. But, as well, and it also matters in terms of when you get that quest where they send you to go take care of someone, and it turns out it's someone you know from your past, so that's going to be a little relevant. Another reason is because, well, I am not happy with how the original version that I recorded turned out. I recorded that on my previous computer, which was awful. Like, I'm just gonna be as blunt about that as I can be. When it came to playing games or recording games on it, it only was able to do the bare minimum. Like, it met the bare minimum requirements. And it just did not look good. I've looked at those videos and they look awful. Now I'm on my current machine, which is far better and far more capable of actually showing it at a better quality, even though I will admit that I do tend to record at a 720 quality instead of 1080 because it's far easier on my current recording software and computer that I use over here to my left to do so at 720 than it is at 1080. Hopefully when I get a better computer I can be able to start recording or even streaming at 1080, but you gotta work with what you have, right? So I also made a couple mistakes. I didn't show a lot of the really cool, well, not a lot, but there were some cool things about the starter zone that I just outright didn't show. Partly because at the time I wasn't really aware of it. I've become more aware of it since then, and want to kind of really try and help show some of that stuff. Because there's a lot of cool things to see in the starter zone. It's one of my favorite starter zones in the entire game. Also, I started it basically after you entered the world for the first time, when really I shouldn't have done that because it has a cool intro narration. Plus, when you pick up your first quest from the Lich King himself, he's the one who actually says the entire dialogue, and I just did it myself. And in hindsight, I didn't really need to do that, because why would you guys want to hear me when you could hear Michael McConaughey do his voice of the Lich King? So, now I actually struggled with which race to play for this character that we're going to be making. In case you're curious, because I know you've probably looked over to the right and have seen, yes, this is the Ice Crown server. Yes, I know. This is my main Alliance server. So I have two servers I play on. One is my main Horde server, the other is my main Alliance server. This is where I mainly have a lot of the majority of my Alliance characters. And I figured I love playing the Death Knight. It's one of my favorite classes in the game. And I figured I had to have a Death Knight on this server, not just because it's Alliance, to have a Death Knight for the Alliance on my Alliance server, but also because the server's named Ice Crown. If you're going to play on the Ice Crown server, you have to have a Death Knight. But I was trying to figure out what race to play. Now, I guess the obvious one could be human, but that's, kind of boring. And I was trying to figure out, like, in lore, what makes sense. Like, what races would be termed the Death Knights. For one thing, I can't figure out how Draenei Death Knights are a thing. Like, lore timeline-wise. It's kind of like a huh for me, but... I do have a Worgen Death Knight on my main Horde server, but that's, one... I like the Worgen, although these days I'm not exactly too fond of the Gilneans, but anyways. And that leaves probably my... And I thought about maybe a Night Elf Death Knight, and that would actually kind of make sense. But I'm not really too fond of the Night Elves. So that just pretty much just left what is definitely my favorite race in the Alliance, the Dwarves. I love the Dwarves. So, and I thought, you know what? A Dwarven Death Knight is actually not too far off. That actually does make sense. There were quite a number of dwarves around Lordaeron and, of course, Northrend and such that, of course, the Lich King would have raised some of them as Death Knights. So, now, of course, the in-lore explanation is not that these are characters from Warcraft 3, but rather these are us from vanilla. And we died. We died in our journeys and explorations in vanilla, and the Lich King was like, ooh, I'll take that one. Which is part of the explanation as to why we start off at level 55 instead of level 1. And I should point that out, that this was a historical moment, because this was the first ever hero class introduced in the game, meaning rather than have to start a character at level 1, you got to start level 55, which was like, wow, that's awesome. This was also the first time where the starter zone was determined not by what race you chose, but by what class you chose. No matter what race you are, whether it be Alliance or Horde, you always start in this one starter zone. So, with all that now being said, let's get underway. Cool narration upcoming. Voiced by the same guy who voices Arthas's father in Wrath, by the way, King Tyrannus. At least I'm pretty sure it's the same voice actor.
A hero. That's what you once were. You stood boldly against the shadow and purchased another dawn for the world with your life. But the evil you fought is not so easily banished. The victory you claimed, not so easily held. For now, the specter of death looms above the world yet again, and it has found new champions to bring about its final reign. Knights of darkness, wielding runes of death and destruction, bound by the will of the Lich King. This is the hour of their ascension. This is the hour of your dark rebirth.
Indeed. Sorry. Man, I love those intros. Alright, you're gonna have to give me a moment here. This is part of the problem when you make a new character, is that you gotta redo all your interface stuff that you want. For the most part, your add-ons and such will be completely fine, except for here I have to kind of reposition them, but that stuff I can do later. That's not really the big deal right now. So you'll notice that right off the bat, we actually start off with a few certain types of abilities. We're also starting off as Unholy by default. So that's why we have some of these abilities here. We haven't gotten our talents yet because, obviously, as a hero class, they are positioned differently. We're actually going to be getting our first 4 talents by the time we hit level 60. That's going to kind of go back to the normal format. So there is that. And I will say, since the last time I did this starter zone on camera, I have become far more familiar with all 3 specs. It used to be I could only play like Unholy while I was questing, and Frost I was dying way too much, and Knight. And Blood, I just couldn't really seem to get a grasp on how to tank as a Blood Death Knight. But I took time with each spec, and I practiced, and I went over every single ability and tooltip, trying to see what would go into what with my resources, such as learning how to manage runic power as well as runes. And it just started to actually click for me to the point where now I feel confident playing all 3 specs. At least when you get to high level, like by the time you get to 120. Obviously, when you start off here, it's going to be a little rough around the edges, but yeah. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and reposition these. There we go. This here. Raise dead because, of course. Now, of course, I can also be able to mess around with heirlooms, but I'll go ahead and worry about that later. For now, we're just going to kind of go around Acheris a bit here because, as I said, there's a number of things to show here just in Acheris before we even get to the stuff down there in the actual starter zone. But before we do that, let us speak to our new Lord and Master, our new King, the true King, the Lich King. The world would tremble in reverence.
Your will is not your own.
So, normally I would read this and try to impersonate the Lich King's voice. However, as I said, he actually will say all of this dialogue on his own once I accept this. So rather than do what I did the first time, which is accept it and then start the video and read it to you myself, trying to impersonate the Lich King, I'm just going to let the incredible Michael McConaughey do that for me.
You know what to do. Bestow upon you, my chosen knight. I have granted you immortality, so that you may herald in a new, dark age for the Scourge. Gaze now upon the lands below us. The Scarlet Crusade scurries to undo my work, while Light's hope stands defiantly against us, a blemish upon these plague lands. They must all be shown the price of their defiance. You will become my force of retribution. Where you tread, doom will follow. Go now and claim your destiny, Death Knight.
Sorry, I turned it up there for a moment just so you could hear that. Oh, gosh, I love that voice. Frostmourne. Sorry, if it's not obvious, I'm a big fan of the Scourge and the Lich King in general. The Lich King is one of my favorite characters that they've ever come up with, and Wrath is just such a fantastic expansion. The Scourge as an enemy and as a concept is such a great enemy and a great force to deal with. The fact that you basically can't really defeat the Scourge because he just brings them back just without effort, because that's how freaking powerful he is. He's like, we kill the Scourge, and he just like, get back up, and they all get back up and they just keep going. It's such a incredible concept, and just so sorry, I'm gushing a bit. Alright, I kind of can't help it. I just love it so much. I just love everything about the whole Scourge faction. When I first created this, I actually thought I was actually going to be playing the game as a Death Knight loyal to the Lich King. I didn't know about the whole we joined the Ebon Blade and break off from the Lich King and such, but it does make sense. By the way, I love the dwarf running animation. Yeah, we're going! Let's go! So, welcome to Acheris, the Ebon Hold. Though at the moment it still belongs to the Lich King, but soon it will belong to the Knights of the Ebon Blade. So, of course, here's Quartermaster Ozorg. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. So we start off with our Hearthstone, but then we also start off with black mushrooms. Apparently, that we're playing Diablo 3 right now. No, obviously the Death Knight only has limited ways to sustain yourselves, and of course, some people like to make sure they have they're carrying on food when they're playing. So this was kind of like here, start off with some food. So we also get some pretty decent sized bags, 12-slot bags right from the get go. So down here, you'll of course notice a number of things. Is that one of those? No. Oh, here we go. All right, so in this starter zone, what I didn't show you guys the first time, I really want to show you guys this time. There's a number of books to read in here. Some are funny, and I mean really funny, especially if you like know references and the lore and such. And then there are some that are actually not that funny, like kind of terrifying. But you'll see. So here's one of the first. Report from the front lines, the Eastern Kingdoms. Death's Breach, Eastern Kingdoms. Instructor Vesuvius spoke out earlier this week, reiterating his policy on mutiny and insubordination. Any Death Knight who dares desert the Scourge will meet a fate far worse than death. Their suffering shall see no end. I will see to it personally. And that is Instructor Vesuvius right over there, who we are supposed to report to right now. While we're at it, and of course you can be able to check out how some of the Death Knight sets, which are some of my favorite armor sets in the entire game, by the way, look on your character. Some of these I've finished collecting the entire sets of, some not so much. Some of these you can get from certain vendors in places like Orgrimmar or Stormwind, if you prefer, or if that's what you usually prefer to play. I actually finished getting this set. I was really happy about it. I just need one more piece for this set. I need one more for this set, and this is one of my absolute favorite sets. I love this set. Still need to work on this set and this set. Actually, that's the normal set. There's the mythic set. Anyways, also, I need to get some of my special Death Knight mounts out here. We're actually about to get this mount, but of course I already have it. But why would I want to use that when I already have even better Death Knight mounts, such as this. That's the 10-player one. But then again, why would I want to use that when I could use this? The 25-player one, yes. And then, of course, Invincible. Absolutely. Oh, and of course, Meat Wagon. Because it's the Scourge. Of course. Trying to remember what other Death Knight mounts I like to use here. I do have the Death Charger, but come on. Why would I use the Death Charger when I have those others? Oh, I don't have... Oh, no, I do. Here's my special Death Lord mount from Legion. There we go. I'll go ahead and put this there as well. Alright, there we go. Oh, wait, gotta put my Hearthstone there. Scourge Stone. So it's not a Hearthstone, it's a Scourge Stone. This is a Hearthstone specifically given to you by the Lich King. Basically. Trying to remember where all the books are here. Of course, we have just some generic vendors here, in case you want to get some more food and drinks to help you out. You can get them right here. Let's see. This is my rune blade. There are many like it, but this one is mine. By Lady Blamu. Blamu? I can't remember. But if you're... Oh, I can't open the guide yet. I was going to show her that she's one of the 4 horsemen from Noxramas. Greetings, Death Knight. By now, Instructor Vesuvius has likely begun teaching you the first lessons of what it means to be a Death Knight. Allow me to begin your instruction on what it what is perhaps the most guarded treasure in a Death Knight's possession, the Rune Blade. Actually, you know what? Before we read this, let's wait and let's get our weapon before we read that. The Death Knights of Acheris. Let's actually see if I can actually get a weapon before we work on that. There's another player doing that quest. So, this is something I actually want to see if I can show you guys, if it can hopefully work. Alright. Oh, we're in the middle of it. Yes, instructor. Oh, it's a poor gnome. So, we kind of missed it. Hopefully I'll show another one. But what basically happened just there, they rose her from the dead to see whether or not she was ready to join the Scourge. And she basically had still maintained, you can even see corpses of that's a Night Elf, that's a Draenei. Again, I'm not really sure when Draenei would have been recovered unless they actually went to either the area, the starter zone in Kalimdor, or to Outland. I'm not really sure, one, how, like, what Scourge forces would have actually been there in Outland, and two, how they could have actually been able to somehow get them from Outland all the way here, unless the Lich King literally opened up a gate, a death gate, which he's fully capable of doing, just straight to the areas in Outland, and, like, told Vesuvius or an initiate, go get those Draenei corpses and bring them to me so I can raise them as Death Knights. And be like, okay. And they go through, grab it, come back through the Death Gate. That's, to me, could be a viable explanation. Otherwise, I don't know how or when, how many of these Draenei would have actually been taken to actually become Death Knights. To be raised as members of the Scourge. But, of course, Vesuvius, he, of course, is someone in Nox Ramus. And, in fact, I believe over here, yeah, these are blood elves. Of course, makes sense. Trolls, undead. Yes, undead, Forsaken, are being re-risen as undead to join the Death Knights. Because you can do that, and some people just find that whole thing kind of funny. That, oh, you were undead, you died, and then you're being brought back as an undead again. Some people just find that very kind of, I don't know, ironic or humorous, maybe? Then again, how humorous is all this? We'll read some of these books in just a moment. I'm really hoping to try and catch Vesuvius doing that event to show you guys what it's like. Because there's a couple different outcomes. One outcome is what you just saw with the gnome. She maintained herself, and they're like, nope, she's not ready yet, kill her. And they did. Alright, here we go. This one. So what are they raising this time? Blood Elf. Where am I? What is this place? Another failure. You have been measured and found wanting. Dispose of it. Yes, instructor. So then they do that again where they call ghouls to kill him. So this is basically a repeating process until they eventually reach a point in their soul being separated from their body to be more ready to become a member of the Scourge. Because usually if you maintain your soul and who you are, they don't consider you to be ready. After all, you can't maintain who you are in terms of your soul and personality and consciousness and being if you're going to be a member of the Scourge and be loyal to the Lich King. I really want to show you the other side of it, where someone is actually considered ready. Maybe while we wait, we'll go ahead and read this one. Guide to the side effects of Reanimate. Welcome to the Scourge! This is a funny one. Now that you have entered your true service, you may find immense relief in your liberation from various mortal inconveniences. No bothersome sleeping to take up your time anymore, nor any great need for shelter from the elements. And you are even free from the mild irritation of cutting hair and nails. How delightful! However, there are a few almost insignificant details to being undead. Keep an eye on your rotting. Some is all very well to scare your foes, but an arm falling off mid-stab is just embarrassing. Learn to love your stench. Some say foul, we say roar. Avoid living animals, especially dogs. Heed your unintelligibility. Should you misplace your lower jaw, you may be reassigned to a position where your gurgling is not amiss. And few of those hold any prestige. Alcohol is simply not the same. My apologies. A bloodbath a day keeps the living away, although adding bubbles is frowned upon. Avoid pastels. They simply do not work with our coloring. Those pants will no longer make you look fat. This one. Looks like it's a Draenei this time. That's one of the funnier books. That really made me chuckle. I return from the grave to do my master's bidding. Amidst the wretch, a champion has been found. Place upon it the trappings befitting a herald of Arthas. Right away, instructor. Listen, Death Knight. Listen for the voice of your master. He calls to you now. Stand and be measured. Rise for your master and await your arrival. Go, now. Victory to the Scourge. So that's the other side of this. Either you are found wanting and you get killed by the ghouls, or you are ready to serve the Lich King and are given an outfit to then go and meet the Lich King, and he will give them their mission. So like I said, let's actually go ahead and talk to Vesuvius and get our Runeblade weapon before we read some of the other books.
What?
You have heard the call of the Lich King, Death Knight. Now is the time to answer your master. The single most important piece of equipment to a Death Knight is the Runeblade. It is through the Runeblade that a Death Knight commands the powers of Frost, Blood, and the Unholy. The Runeblade also acts as a vessel to store the Death Knight's runic power. The time has come to create your first Runeblade. Search the weapon racks on this floor and locate a battle-worn sword. Once found, take the sword to a nearby runeforge and use it to create a Runeblade.
We will have our revenge.
So there are some weapon racks just kind of scattered throughout. Doesn't really matter which one you pick. The idea is that these are all weapons that have been collected that have seen battles and such. More than likely from all these players who died while questing in vanilla. Because we all had these kind of generic weapons, so of course they would have been worn out during our time questing throughout vanilla, because of course they would have. I just realized there are some abilities that I actually don't have on my bar right from the get-go that I should. For one thing, gotta have my racial ability, Stoneform, which is actually a pretty nice ability for when you play the Blood spec, because of course, as a tank, you would want a ability that helps reduce damage you take by 10% for 8 seconds. Not to mention removes harmful poison, disease, curse, magic, and bleed effects. That's a really nice ability for a tank, which is why I always recommend, if you're going to play a tank class, a Dwarf is a pretty nice choice on the Alliance side because of that Stoneform ability. Not to mention a 1%. Frost damage taken reduced by 1%. Not exactly the the most enticing of racial passives, right? strike, damage, critical strike, and healing increased by 2%. Basically, it's like this is the main one that's like the big deal, really. Now, I thought... There we go. There we are.
Make it quick.
The Rune Blade is an extension of your being. A Death Knight cannot battle without a Rune Blade. Well done. You have successfully created your first bladed weapon. With it, you will sow the seeds of chaos and destruction. In your wake will be a bloodied field of battle, littered with the corpses of all that would dare oppose the Scourge. So now I learned rune forging, and I get my rune blade. The mark of war is etched indelibly upon your soul, Death Knight. You have learned the dark art of rune forging, and with it you will engrave runes of power upon your weaponry. Preparations for battle must be made. Return to one of the rune forges here in the heart of Akris, and use the power of rune forging to emblazon your weapon with a rune of power. Return to me when your blade glows with dark energy. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Sometimes I get carried away. Okay. So, of course, we are currently unholy. I like that it actually has the transmog look of the sword from Baron Rivendare, I believe. Which I do have, by the way. This one. The Rune Blade of Baron Rivendare. You get this from him in the Stratholme dungeon. So now that we have the Rune Blade, let's go ahead and read this book. Why can't I read it? What happened? Ah! Alright, let's do this first. So, I find it funny that there's an unlearned one here, because basically there's no other... This is something I really wish that they at some point would expand on, because they never really did. As far as I know, these are the only 3 runes that you can be able to actually do as a Death Knight, which is disappointing because it kind of hurts on combinations that you could possibly work on. So the idea is that there's 3 here. One definitely for a 2-handed weapon. This is the only one here, which is ideal for, of course, when you play Blood. And then there's 2 other ones here that you can give to either a 2-handed or a 1-handed weapon, which you could do for Frost. So this one increases your total strength by 15. It gives you a chance to heal for 6% and a increased total of strength by 15% for 15 seconds. This one is a rune that causes 4% extra weapon damage as frost damage increases enemies' vulnerability to your frost attacks. So obviously you want to do this for a 1-handed weapon for frost. And then you have this one, a 2-handed rune weapon with a rune that increases armor by 5% and all your stats by 5%. So because this is a 2-handed weapon, we are of course going to give it that rune. And we could give these other 2 runes to these 2 other weapons here. So this one will go here. And then this one will go on the other one. That's kind of the idea anyway. So now you can see here it says enchanted with the rune of the stars, stone skin gargoyle. So, and for some reason it won't let me read that book now. Oh, there we go. There we go. No. Come on, do I have to like get right next to it or something? You saw that, right? I can click on it. Well, for now, let's read this one actually. The Death Knights of Akris. Jade, alive. Comment, bloodthirsty. Sixen, alive. Chatty. Munch, alive, destructive. Cobalt, deceased, fell to his death. Not much upstairs. Probably saved him a lifetime of suffering. Harmony, deceased. The name of this Death Knight was found in violation of common scourge decency, struck down by the Lich King. Nope, can't have a Death Knight named Harmony. Quack! Melt, alive, turned into a ghoul. Milton, alive, rambles. Minitalis, alive, sees things that do not exist. My name, alive, needs more cowbell. Goes on for hundreds of more pages and such, listing many other Death Knights. They are both still in service and no longer in service. Oh, this poor troll.
Yes.
Remember these words, Death Knight. The Runeforge is a scourge instrument. It exists only in Acheris, Noxramas, and the heart of Icecrown. You may only emblazon your weaponry at a Runeforge. Return often and emblazon all of your weapons. A Death Knight must be prepared for all that would dare oppose him. The endless hunger will soon take hold of you, Death Knight. When it does, you will feel pain immeasurable. There is only one remedy for the suffering. The hunger must be sated. I give you the key to your salvation. Chained to the heart of Acheris are those deemed unworthy of the Dark Brotherhood. Use the key to free an unworthy initiate. Allow them to equip their gear and battle you for their freedom. And then slay them in the name of Sithis. I'm sorry. Wrong Dark Brotherhood. Kill and the pain will cease. Fail and suffer for eternity. Live or die. The choice is yours to make.
Suffer well.
So he's basically referring to these people. Yeah. By the way, hold on. Let me see if I have this right. Nope, never mind. For a second, I thought it was going to be only horde races because I'm playing a dwarf, and then I noticed, nope, there's a human there. There's a gnome here, and I was about to be like, wait a minute, but I don't know. Now it kind of makes sense. It's fine. Let's go ahead and do this. Actually, before we do that, rise, my minion. There you go. You will defend me. There can be only one survivor. Ha! You can barely hold a blade. Yours will be a quick death. Huh. Funny. I was about to say the same to you. Yours was a quick death.
Speak your peace.
As expected, my chosen knight has triumphed. You are ready. Behold, Acheris, the grand citadel of death. It has no equal in this world. Not even the mighty Noxramas could withstand a direct assault from the Ebon Hold. Looming above the face of the necropolis is the all-seeing eye of Acheris. From it, the Master is able to see great distances into the territories held by our enemy. Ah! Stop running away!
Done here. You need something?
By our enemies. What the eye sees, the Lich King sees. And now the time has come for you to peer through the eye. The Lich King has called for you. Go now. Suffer well, brother.
Leave me be.
Please let me read this book now. This? Alright. Okay. Was perhaps a death the rune blade. Without your hand to guide it, your rune blade is but a hollow shell. separate. You are both broken entities, weak and powerless. Should you ever find yourself without possession of a rune blade, know then that your only task should be the acquisition of another with all due haste. As a Death Knight, it is through your rune blade that your will shall be imposed on all who dare resist the Lich King. For just as you, young Death Knight, are the extension through which the Lich King imposes his will, so is your rune blade the instrument that has been granted the honor in delivering this authority. Of this authority, understand these principles. Number 1. United, your rune blade becomes an extension of your very body, and your body belongs to the Lich King. As one, your rune blade becomes your will manifest in physical form, and your will is that of the Lich King. Number 3. Together, your rune blade becomes the vein through which death itself is delivered to your soul, and your soul shall deliver the will of the Lich King. Through the course of your training, you may find yourself compelled to focus upon some of the different disciplines of study available to your kind. On this matter, I can only say this: all are unworthy of study, and to neglect some at the cost of others is a foolish pride that I have seen cost other, less capable Death Knights in battle their lives. It is likely that some of you may soon find your rune blade to be a particularly potent object through which to channel your own fury. However, this is not enough. Do not be content to believe that your rune blade is simply a mere tool to focus one's meditation. No, it is far more than that. The most powerful of our kind have been able to command the power of their blade with but a simple extension of their will. Together, they fight of singular mind, body, and purpose to crush any foolish enough to stand in their way. Others may find that their blade responds most eagerly when infused with the power of an icy chill. In this way, even the sharpest of rune blades will find themselves made even more potent. The same power that permeates our glorious citadel of Icecrown is yours to command, Death Knight. Should you choose to master this discipline, there shall be no escape for your enemies, as they find their actions slowed and made impossible by the cold. Still, others may find their true calling in mastering the power of their blades to bring about disease and plague in crushing our enemies. This too is a specialty unique to our kind and worthy of pursuit. The mightiest of defenses may seem impregnable at first, yet for every defense therein lies the weakness that it is covering. It is simply a matter of uncovering it. Never forget, Death Knight, that it is not an army, but a plague that brought about the destruction of Lordaeron. Ain't that the truth? At least in a manner of speaking. It wasn't necessarily the plague directly that wrecked Lordaeron. That more so came about after what happened to Arthas, but anyways. I thought there may have been a book around this area here. Oh, that's the same one from before. I thought there was another book around here. Guide to the Side Effects of Reanimation. This is basically the same one from over there. Never mind. Just want to check, because there are some other really good books here. Oh, here's another one. One Truth in Undeath. By the way, there's at least one book here written by Kel'Thuzad. I just can't remember which one it is. I hope it's obvious. Behold, the finest of ironies. The living ascribe unto undeath all the most sickly attributes of their own lives. hopeless servitude, savagery, stillness of the spirit. We serve. The living serve too, though they serve kings, warlords, druids, priests, gods, men, and beasts. We serve only the mighty, unifying will of the Lich King, which compels us unto prosperity and unity. For all the endeavors of men, there exists only endless records of tragedy, cruelty, betrayal, and selfishness. I'm pretty sure Kel'Thuzad is the one who wrote this, because this sounds like Kel'Thuzad. I can just hear him saying this. I can see it. For the Scourge, there is only efficiency and totality. Serve the Lich King in life, or serve him in death. He is a way of choice whose roads lead only to fulfillment. Cold in flesh, but warmed by unity, the mighty Scourge are one nation, one mind, one being. True cold dwells in the heartless gaze of the guards, who turn away sickly refugees from their neighboring country in a time of war. Are not all men of one kind? Nay, divided in their icy hearts. Raise high our ideals, and bring low our foes. Fold their broken into our number, until all serve the frozen throne. Yep. Ooh, report from the front lines, Undercity. Our sources inside the Undercity report that the Horde is mobilizing to stage an assault on Northrend. The Horde's troops, most of whom are returning from deployment in Outland, are now gathering and preparing to strike at Icecrown. Furthermore, covert agents report that the Forsaken's Royal Apothecary Society has ramped up activity lately. While nothing is confirmed at this point, rumors fly that the Society has had a breakthrough in their plague research. Again, this is only hearsay, but all forces are advised to give Forsaken Alchemists a wide berth. Obviously hinting and foreshadowing at what would happen at the Wrathgate. Death to the Scourge and death to the living! Let's see. Oh, by the way, notice that there is a there's a living human enslaved laborer here. And then we have Master Corvus over here, who is obviously a skeleton. And then we have another mindless laborer over here. Just kind of want to point that out in case you notice and you're curious, and the implications of what this visual means. What it could mean for this guy. Anyways, I think that's all the books on this level. There are more books on the other level. And we are going to stop here, and we are going to just double check that there aren't any other books on this level. We'll head back over there to the Lich King at some point, but we may head to the other level to go check out some stuff before we continue with the story of the Starter Zone. Stay tuned.